Hello, this is Lord Chocolate, and here I am with a video. This time, I shall be doing a Lord of the Rings lore video. Let me see about a pen color. Just to be on the safe side, I am not going to be using images from the internet just for avoiding copyright issues. But I'm going to be doing a lore of Lord of the Rings video. And this is going to be the history of Arda. Let's see if there's a text. Of Arda video. And the Arda is the name for the earth in the Lore of Lord of the Rings. This video is going to be based off of the time period of the first Dark Lord, Morgoth. He was quite a powerful character, so let's get into it. In the beginning of the universe, basically, there was one who was named Uru or Iluvatar, and known as Iluvatar on Middle-earth. By the way, if I mispronounce anything a little bit, Tolkien fans, I try my best, but I don't want to have to sit with the pronunciation guide right in front of me. But I think I've got most of the things down. But Iluvatar decided to basically created the Ainur, who were or Ainur, actually, the children of his thought, which were basically beings and kind of angelic-like beings that were really powerful. And the greatest of these was named Melkor, who had some of all of their gifts. The most of them had specific gifts. Like Manwë was basically ruler of the winds and the airs, while Ulmo was god of not god, but he was ruler of the sea and waters, while Aule was the smith, and Yavanna was the ruler of plants and stuff. Though, of course, the earth actually hadn't been made yet. So these are just their gifts that they've gotten, but then Iluvatar made a great theme of music. At least that's how it's described. However, that's supposed to be a music note, but whatever. But he made a great theme of music, and he then had the Ainur all sing and add their own embellishments to the theme. But Melkor decided to try and create his own theme, so his theme clashed with Iluvatar's theme, and some of the other Ainur joined Melkor, while some stayed loyal to Iluvatar's theme. And then Iluvatar basically stopped that theme and then went through several other themes, but in the end, he basically reprimanded Melkor, saying, "All that you intended is going to work together for my purposes," and then gives some examples like how the immoderate heat that Melkor has created make it so that through his song, because this song was basically Song of Creation, so he's basically saying the immoderate heat you made will make it so that water actually goes into the air, so that Manwë will be closer to Ulmo, because Manwë was the ruler of the air and Ulmo of the sea and waters. So I'm just randomly doodling now. But then he let some of the Ainur choose whether they wished to enter the world. Well, he first gave them a vision of what they'd done through the song. That was basically this great vision of Earth and its history. It went through all the history of Earth And in the beginning, the Earth was flat. Just letting you know for the sake of this video, the Earth was flat. Like it was like this big table-like thing with the rock down here, the ground like around here, and it was kind of a roundish shape, but it was flat. But then they were allowed to enter the world if they so choose, but if they entered, their power would be bound to it, as in they couldn't leave. So Melkor and several of the other Valar, or Ainur, entered the world, and the greatest ones, including Melkor, Manwë, Ulmo, and let me see, and what was it? Yavanna, Aule, and others like them were known as the Valar because they were the greatest. The others were known as the Maiar, I think, or Maiar, because, and I mean, that term I think also is just the term of the race of the spirits. So the Valar were technically Maiar, but Valar was a term that was more often used for them because they were more powerful. In the beginning, the Valar waged war with Melkor and his forces because he had convinced many of the Ainur to join him, and he wished to become dominion over the earth and gain the power to control all of Earth, and he claimed he was the rightful ruler of the earth, basically. So he fought against Manwë and the other Valar in Great War, and eventually another Valar joined the original Valar, named, I think, what was it? It starts with a T. Tulkas or something like that. And Tulkas was a very strong Vala, which is singular for Valar. And he drove Morgoth out of the... Basically, they managed to drive Morgoth away so that he left and hid in the void of the world beyond the walls of the night, which is basically what they used to describe the edge of the world, basically. That's the walls between the world and the void that surrounds it. And then there was peace for a while. During this time... let me get the eraser out. Whee! Okay. During this time, the Valar then went about shaping the world as they wished. So, the world basically at this time was like this one lake with a long island in it where the Valar made their home. And then they had Aule, the smith, build two great lights in the world. One to the north, I believe, and one to the south. I forget the names of these lights. I may remember them, but I don't want to ruin it. But there was peace for a while, and then one day, while the Valar were feasting on their homeland, or their land, Melkor re-entered the world from the north and delved a great fortress called Utumno in the north behind the Iron Mountains, I believe. This is roughly based off of some maps I've seen, but yeah, he made Utumno up in the north about here, which was his first great fortress. Then he attacked the great lamps while the Valar were distracted, and he destroyed them and threw them down, and the entire earth was changed in great chaos and ruin. And the Valar did not feel safe to reshape it because they knew not where the children of Iluvatar, which were elves and men, were going to come from, because they had not yet appeared. They were basically beings like the Valar who were created directly by Iluvatar and had free will, unlike the animals and plants and stuff that were created by the Valar. So, thus, Middle-earth, or the Earth's shape was changed, and there was Valinor in the west, and there was Middle-earth, which was still kind of a weird shape, had 2 inland seas, I believe. And then there was the land of and then there was the land over here, I believe. And the Valar decided to inhabit the land of Aman, which parts of it became known as Valinor, which is right here. They made greatest mountains in the world as guards to protect against Morgoth's dominion. And Morgoth basically ruled in Utumno up here. So for a long time, Middle Earth was left in darkness, and the Valar made their great city of Valimar, and Manwë, the lead of who is currently ruler of the Valar, because Melkor had fallen, made his fortress or his house on top of the tallest mountain in the world, Tanicatil or something like that. Tanicatil or something like that. And basically, the Valar inhabited the land and made their mansions, and they also, Yavanna, the Vala who governed plants, made 2 great trees that produced light. One was called, I think, Telepyrion, and the other, Laurelin, I think, was the other one, and I think Laurelin was the golden one, which produced golden light. And then Telepyrion, or something like that, produced light that was... Sorry if I'm butchering the names, by the way. I don't have them right here to look at. But basically, they were 2 great trees that produced immense light. And they lit all of Valinor, but they did not light Middle-earth. And Middle-earth was left in Melkor's darkness. If I've called him Morgoth, forgive me for calling him that. It's because, or use the name Morgoth, that's just another name that Melkor was later known by. But these trees were basically provided light to Valinor, and then there was peace for a while. But then the Elves appeared, and the Elves appeared in a bay in one side of, I think it was on this side of one of the seas, inland seas. And Morgoth discovered them first, it is believed, and he basically took some and tormented them, creating the first orcs, which is, according to some books, the Silmarillion, which I got this information from, basically. It was one of his most heinous crimes against Iluvatar. So basically, he took some elves and made orcs. And at the same time, he had all these demons and monsters that were basically evil spirits, some of which were Ainur, or maybe all of them. I don't really know if there are other races of spirits than the Maiar and the Ainur, and the Valar, which are Ainur. But there were basically demons, and the Maiar that fell under Morgoth. One of the greatest was Sauron, who, from Lord of the Rings, was really powerful in and of himself, but he was actually one of the greatest servants of Morgoth. And there were also the Balrogs. There were many Balrogs. They were basically Maiar of fire that were corrupted by Morgoth. And I think they were corrupted before the creation of the world, like during the song, actually. The song of the Ainur. But then one of the Valar discovered that the elves had appeared. So he basically brought the Valar over, and they overthrew Melkor in Utumno, his fortress, they actually captured him, but they did not look through all the pits and dungeons in the deep of Utumno and didn't find all of them. Also, they didn't search all the pits and dungeons of Angbad, a fortress he had made towards the west of Middle-earth as a defense against the Valar should they come. Then the earth was majorly changed in this great war, and much chaos ensued. Yet the Valar came to the Elves, and some of the Elves they convinced to head over towards Valinor, which they did. And many of the elves came to Valinor, and in Valinor, one of the greatest elves of all time, named Fëanor, was born. He was of the Noldor, who were the craftsman elves. Like, they took after Aule, and they became very great in the skills of crafts. And Fëanor made many great things. Among them were 3 jewels, the Silmarils, which contained the mingled light of the trees. These jewels were basically the most beautiful jewels ever created, and they were the only thing that he basically valued more than the jewels, I think, from what it appeared, was definitely his father. And his father was the leader of the Noldor. Morgoth, after years and years of imprisonment in Valinor, was taken before the council of the Valar again, and he pretended to have converted to be good again. So the Valar let him walk in servitude among the elves, and Morgoth, through trickery, turned them against each other and against the Valar, so that. And by the time when the Valar finally discovered that Morgoth was doing this, Morgoth fled. But Morgoth had begun to lust after the Silmarils, so he came back, and he also wished to destroy the light of Valinor and basically ruin the Valar's relation with the elves. So, wait, I made the arrow facing the wrong way. But he wished to destroy the light of Valinor and ruin the relation with the elves, so he fled to a land towards the south of Valinor that was actually still connected to Valinor, but it's on the other side of the mountains. And in this land was Ungoliant, a giant spider-like spirit, a spirit that had taken the form of a giant spider, and who used to be a servant of Morgoth, but she she lusted after power for herself, so she basically betrayed even her master and just became really gross giant spider, and she wove webs of darkness all on the edges of Valinor, feeding off of light. So he went to her and convinced her to help him go into Valinor and destroy the Trees of Light. So the Trees of Light were on a hill right outside Valimar, the city of the Valar, and there was a great feast going on, at which Fëanor had been summoned. So Morgoth and Ungoliant climbed up the mountains, and then quickly traveled to the tree in a cloud of darkness, impenetrable darkness woven by Ungoliant, who was the spirit. I think I have already said the name. And Morgoth attacked the trees with his spear, and then gave Ungoliant their sap to drink, and she poisoned them. And then Ungoliant grew very great in power and size from the tree sap and from some other things she consumed in Valinor. And so that even Morgoth was afraid of her. But then Morgoth went to the fortress of the Noldor, where Fëanor kept the Silmarils, and since he was gone at the feast, only Fëanor's father was there to protect them, because the rest of the guards were so terrified. The rest of the Noldor could not even stand the presence of Morgoth and Ungoliant. But Morgoth killed Fëanor's father, and then stole the Silmarils and all the jewels, I think, as well, and then fled with Ungoliant to Middle-earth, and the Valar were foiled by the darkness when they tried to pursue him, cast by Ungoliant. After betraying Ungoliant by refusing to give her the Silmarils, because he had promised to give her anything her lust may desire other than the world, if she would help him. So, after betraying Ungoliant and being rescued by his Balrogs when Ungoliant tried to stop him, Morgoth retreated to his old fortress of Angbad in the north of Middle-earth, and he reared the three greatest mountains of Middle-earth, Thangorodrim, over the fortress of Angbad, and there fortified himself. In the meantime, the elves, the Noldor, many of the Noldor fled from Valinor because, or not fled, they ran out of Valinor because to try and pursue Morgoth against the will of the Valar. And on the way, but the Valar refused to give them trouble because they weren't going to prove Melkor's lies to, or Morgoth's lies to be true, that the Valar were keeping the elves there by force. And the elves, and at this around this time, when since Fëanor figured out that Morgoth had killed his father and stolen the Silmarils, Fëanor basically gave Melkor his new name, Morgoth, which I think means something like the accursed or the enemy. Then Fëanor and the elves basically got banished from Noldor, got banished from Valinor for killing some of their other elves who refused to help them get their boats to travel across. And then, through many paths, the Noldor came to Middle-earth. Then there were many great battles with the Noldor and the elves that had remained behind on Middle-earth, fighting against Morgoth, and also the dwarves came into these battles, some on the good, some on the evil, and also men joined these battles, some on good, some on evil. The good men were known as the Edain, I think, or the Edain. Edain, I think. But after many battles and much time had passed, there was born a man named Arundel, and one of the Silmarils was recaptured by Morgoth in this time frame. Arundel went across the sea to try and find the Valinor, which had been hidden by enchantments or through the sea, because Morgoth had almost won, and they needed help. He was part man, part elf, so he was a perfect representative for them. But he went, and first time he tried, he was foiled by the enchantments, but then as he came back, his wife actually fled because some of the elves who were sons of Fëanor came and attacked them to try and reclaim the Silmaril that had been taken from Morgoth, because the sons of Fëanor had taken, or Fëanor, I think it's Fëanor, but I hope I'm not really annoying you if you're a Lord of the Rings fan. But they had sworn to pursue anyone and basically just take the Silmarils from anyone, regardless of which side they were on. So his basically Elwing, wife of Arundel, fled, and she jumped into the sea, but Ulmo, ruler of the waters, changed her into a bird, and she was able to fly and meet Arundel. And then with the Silmaril, and then Arundel turned around once Elwing resumed her normal form, and with the Silmaril he was able to pass through the enchantments and come to Valinor. There he came to the Valar and convinced them to come help the men and elves of Middle-earth, because the men had awoken during the time with Morgoth fighting the elves. And then the Valar sent a great host of elves and at least one Maiar, maybe more, and possibly a Valar, but some Valar, but it didn't ever mention that Valar were in the host. And they came, and also Arendel's ship was given like the ability of flight, so later on in the battle, Arundel came, and there was a great battle between good and evil, and nearly all the evil creatures were wiped out, though some fled, including some orcs and several of the Balrogs that went down and hid under the roots of some of the deepest mountains. Thus came the Balrog that was found in Moria. And Morgoth was finally overthrown again, and he was chained and thrown over the walls of the night on the edge of the world, and thus ended, I think, the First Age, in which Morgoth was the Dark Lord. And he was kept carefully guarded past the edge of the world, and for a while there was peace, or I'm not sure if there was really much peace, but the shape of Middle-earth was again majorly transformed, and the area where most of the wars with Morgoth were fought were actually sunk under the ocean, with only a little bit of that area remaining, which is in Middle-earth. It was this area at right near the Shire, actually. It's called, this is the Gulf of Lune, I believe, and then there's the Blue Mountains about right here with a gap. Actually, the Gulf of Lune goes through the Blue Mountains. This looks like a mouth, but then the Shire is about like here maybe. But this is basically how the map of Middle-earth was changed in the north, and there was much chaos around there. And Sauron claimed to repent of his evil deeds, but he was too ashamed to go back and pay penance for whatever he'd done or submit to the judgment of the Valar. So he remained in Middle-earth and fell back into evil. Thus, I shall end up my history of this phase of Middle-earth, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And hope to see you in the next video, in which I go over the time of the reign of Sauron, and then in future videos when I go over specific characters and events during the Lord of the Rings lore. Hope you enjoyed.